All right, now that we have our header, our photo, and our headline and deck, it's time for us to add our body text. So you'll see from the example that we're going to be putting body text on both the left and the right hand side. On the left side, we're going to have two columns, and we're going to have a special beginning. Instead of using that drop cap, we're going to add in a gray box with a letter on top of it. And then on the right hand side, we're going to have three columns instead of two. So we're going to start by, of course, drawing a text box. So come over here to your left toolbar and select the type tool, and go ahead and draw this box all the way from the left side margin to the right side, and have it just ending above the pink bottom margin, and let go. Perfect. Now what we want to do is we want to make this two columns. There's a couple ways to do that. Right now you can see that I have the paragraph tools up, and I have my column options here that I can change to 2. Or if you click the black selection tool arrow and click on your box, you'll have that same option at the top. You can go about this either way, whatever works best for you. The next thing we need to do, of course, is we need to get the text that we're going to be using in this section. So I'm just going to scooch this over because I have my folder right here. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to go to find the Lab2 text right here. I'm going to click, and it's going to open up for me. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this information. And you can see it's pretty long, and you can go ahead and press Command A if you're on a Mac, or you can just click and highlight all the way to the top, and press Command C once again if you're on a Mac. If not, go ahead and right click and copy, and then you'll come back here to your InDesign screen, and I'm going to place my cursor inside of my box, and I'm going to press Command V, and that's going to copy all of my text from the other document into my InDesign document. Perfect. Once you've done that, we need to make a few changes, of course, to the text. So you can click 5 times quickly or press Command A. Our goal here is that we want the information that we can see and the text that is not being seen right now because the box isn't big enough. We want to come up here to our top toolbar and select the A, which is our type area. And we want to make just a couple little changes here. I'm going to make the font size 9, so I'm going to come here to my font area and press 9. And then I'm going to press Tab, and I'm going to change my leading, this is the space between our lines, to 11. You might remember from the previous tutorial that I recommend for body text you have a 2-point difference between the size of your type and the leading. This gives the eye a little bit of breathing room, but doesn't make it feel so far apart as though the lines aren't being read together very easily. The next thing I want to do is I of course want to go ahead and add some indents. So there's a couple ways to do that, but I'm going to go, you can do it up here in this palette, or you can go to your paragraph, which is where it typically is. And I'm going to change this to 1P2, that's the font indent that I like to use. That's what I used both at a magazine and a newspaper because I think it's a good size. If it looks a little bit too big, of course you can make adjustments. Maybe you want to come here and make it just a little bit smaller. That's up to you. And that looks pretty good for now. So I like how that's looking. I'll need to go back and make a few changes, of course. But first what I want to do is I want to go ahead and move some of this text over to the other side. I told you, of course, there's a few ways that you can do this. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out on my page a little bit. And I could come right here and just click on the little plus sign, and you'll see that the text loaded onto my cursor. And I'm going to click just anywhere on this right side page. When I do that, it's going to give me the rest of my text, and you can see it's perfect because it's not too long for this page. So that means we're going to be able to fit all the information on here. The next thing I want to do is, of course, I need to change it to the number of columns I'm wanting. So I'm going to go ahead and select the little column button here and change it from 1 to 3. Now we're going to have a sidebar going here, so don't worry if it's not quite long enough, and go ahead and pull up your text to the top just like that. We'll go in and make adjustments in a little bit. There are a few things I want you to note. You might have seen in the text that you received in the Word document that there's this space right here. While Adobe doesn't bring in things like indents, it will bring in those extra spaces, so you'll just want to get rid of them if they're not necessary. So once you have gone ahead and got rid of that extra blank, we're going to move on to the next step. And the next step is going to be making that gray box with the letter O, because this is an opinion piece, and that's how this publication notes an opinion piece. So once again, I'm going to go in, I'm going to zoom in on this left-hand side of my page. I'm doing this by pressing Command on my keyboard and the plus sign. You can also come up to your view area and make changes, or you can come right down here and change your zoom level, whatever is easiest for you. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure nothing is selected. So I just pressed my black arrow, clicked here to the side, and made sure that nothing was selected. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle. Well, I'm going to draw a pretty close to a square, but it's going to be a rectangle in this case. And I'm going to do that by choosing my rectangle tool. Last time I had it where you just drew it and then we reshaped. This time I'm going to have you do something a little bit different because I want you to learn a new skill. So I'm going to press the rectangle tool. I'm just going to click one time. And it's going to open up a dialog box like you see here on the screen. And I really like doing this because then I can get my exact shape, size, if I know exactly what size I want it to be. A lot of times when you're designing and you're like coming up with your idea, you're not going to know exactly what size yet. So you're going to play around by reshaping. But in this case, I built this tutorial for you to show you these types of tools, and so I know exactly how big I want you to have this. So I'm going to have you type in, once again, this is in picas, 3P5, and it's going to change it to inches. So you can see there, that's just over half an inch, to 3P6. See, they're going to be slightly different, so it's not quite a square. And I'm going to press OK. And you can see that the box has shown up. But if I click off of this box, it's going to disappear. So I want to make sure that I've clicked on it, I have it selected. I'm going to go ahead up here to the fill area. I'm going to select that same gray that we made for the name David Carr and the lines that we used. So go ahead and select that, and then you can just drag it down to the very start of your paragraph. You want to make sure that it aligns with the top line of your text box and the left line of your text box, which should also be the same line here as your left side margin. What we need to do is we need to put a text wrap around this box in order for it not to cover up the text underneath. For a lot of you, you might see text wrap right over here in your right side toolbar, but if you're not seeing it there, come up here to the window, scroll down and select text wrap, and you'll get your options. We're going to be selecting the second one from the left, which is the bounding box, because of course we are putting a text wrap around something that is rectangular. We'll be using this one in other classes. So go ahead and select this option, and you're going to see that it puts a nice text wrap around your box. We're going to make a few changes to this box to make it look a little bit cleaner. But what we want to do is right now our text is right up against that line, and it does not look good. There's not enough breathing space for our eyeballs. So we want to go ahead and select this box, and we want to make just a few changes. If we make this, too much, it's going to look really far away. But I'm going to click up just once to have it at 0.0625, and I'm going to have it do that all the way around. And I think that looks like a pretty good distance. So I'm going to say okay. But there are a few things I'm having issues with. First, I don't need this indent here because while it's a new paragraph, it looks awkward to have this trapped space and it decreases readability. So I'm going to go ahead and double click, which is going to move from the pointer to the cursor for type. And I'm going to change this indent back to 0. All right, that looks pretty good. Next, we have a really big gap here. And so I'm going to take this box and I'm going to move it around and see if it looks better a little bit taller or a little bit shorter based on, what we're going for with this look. So I can make it a little taller. Uh-oh, now I have a huge space here. So I might want to make a few changes. The first, you don't have to put this wraparound all the way around the box. We could choose not to put it underneath. To do that, come back to your text wrap area and unclick this link. Once you do that, you can manually change the bounding box, and so I'm going to make this bottom one 0. All right, that's looking a lot better. So now I don't have that huge line, but I may decide, do I want to pull it up a little bit and see what it looks like to have that biopic right there? I like that because it means that I have a little something underneath and it's not going directly to that new paragraph. So I think I'm going to leave it like that for now because I think it looks pretty good. Once I've done that, so now we've made our shape a little bit smaller, but that's often how design is. Now I want to put a letter on top of it. The way this publication works is they put O in front of pieces like this so that our reader knows that this is an opinion piece. And this is a design decision that's been made by their art director. And it's really nice because then we know that this is not considered a traditional reported news story. This is someone's opinion about not just this movie, but the different award ceremonies and what is happening, particularly with the Oscars during this time. So what I want to do is I want to grab my text box and I'm going to draw it out to the side, and you're going to see why in a minute. So I'm just going to draw a text box. It's okay if it goes over a few things, and I'm going to type the letter O in a capital letter. So hold the shift and press O. Once I've done that, I want to make just a few changes to it, of course. I want to highlight it. I'm going to go up here to my character formatting, and I'm going to change it from Minion Pro to Calibri. I'm just going to type it in because I think it's easier sometime. And it may happen like this where you don't have this font. I meant to mention this in previous videos, but sometimes I may ask you to use a font in one of these tutorials that your computer doesn't have because you might be using a different version of InDesign or the Adobe Creative Suite, and so sometimes there are changes. So what I want to do is I want to have a serif font or a sans serif font. That means it doesn't have the little hands and feet on it. And so there's some filters I can go ahead and use if, for example, I tell you to use a sans serif font and you don't have the one that I'm using. So I can come here to my classifications and I can choose, I only want to see my sans serif options. Once I do that, it's going to give me a list of possible ones that may be similar to what I've given you in the tutorial. This is not a big deal. You can select pretty much any one that looks like it. I'm going to go with Arial Narrow. It looks pretty close to Calibri. If you're not familiar with Calibri, you can Google it, or you can look at it on the example that I provided because that does use Calibri. That's when I was using a different version of this program. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and make it big. I'm going to start with 43, but of course I may need to resize this because now I've made that box smaller than what I intentionally was going to have it as. And I'm going to make it white. So I'm going to come up here to my fill tool for the text, and I'm going to go from black to white. Perfect. Now I'm not going to be able to see it, but we know it's there because we have that box. And then I'm going to drag it on top of my gray box. But what happens is you're not going to be able to see it because it says that there's overset type. This is because the wraparound is being applied to everything on top of this box. So what I want you to do is I want you to press Command B on your computer, Command and then B as in boy. And you're going to come down here where it says Ignore Text Wrap. Only this box is going to ignore that text wrap of the gray box. So when I select this, I can press Preview. You're going to see that that box now is no longer worried about the wraparound, and we can see the O inside of our gray box, which is exactly what we want. And then you're going to press OK. Once you've done that, what you want to do is want to go ahead and move this O to where it's kind of in the center. I click off and I think it's a little tight in there. If I press the W, there's not a lot of space on the top and bottom. So I'm just going to highlight it and I'm going to bop it down about 2 points. I'm going to press my black arrow. I'm going to tidy this box up so it's right against my O. And then I'm going to center it as best as I can. I'm just going to eyeball it for now. And so now you should have the O inside of the gray box, and you should have all of your text here on the left-hand side in 2 columns, and your text on the right-hand side in 3 columns. The last thing I want you to do is I just want you to learn how to group items. So I'm going to click on that O. I'm going to hold the Shift button on my keyboard, and I'm going to then select the gray box. So I only have those 2 pieces selected, and I'm going to press Command on my keyboard and G, and it's going to group my 2 items. If you're on a PC, you can also go to Object and select Group. Perfect. So now we've completed the 5th section of this tutorial. Next, we're going to start working on the sidebar that's on the right-hand page, and then we'll do a little bit of tidying of our 2 pages with the text, and then we'll move on to finish up this tutorial with the folio line at the bottom, which tells us the publication that this goes in.